Salute. How y'all doing? My name is DerrickCWilliams. Shout out and respect due to my newest subscribers. Lisa M, Golpist Terminator, Social Media, Wahala TV, Express Labrish News, Old Doris's Health and Tasty Meals, Chanan Desway, and last but certainly not least, Virginia bred content creator Mango 392. Had a chance to meet him just yesterday. Shout out, my man. Seemed like a good chap. As a rule, I normally don't do 2 or 3 videos a day, but I thought this would be very instructive. I always say in my comments section or when I'm live and things like that, Derrick don't talk about it if he ain't looked into it. A lot of the stuff that I put on my YouTube channel most recently, this is stuff that's kind of like old news to me. But I know that the things that I put on YouTube most recently, they are a little unsettling, and people will most likely dismiss it as being crazy and things like that. People usually say conspiracy theorists. A conspiracy theorist is only a person that questions known liars. Our government is confirmed to be a known liar. I think anyone who is aware of recent history will attest to the fact that our government does lie to us quite often. The title of this presentation will be called Operation Lockstep Game Theory. And I'm just one man in the comment section on YouTube. I've been using the phrase running game on the planet recently because of stuff that I've been researching. And if you looked into it for yourself, you would probably come away with that interpretation as well. We are only as good as the information we get, be it vetted or hearsay. And so a lot of times what you'll find content creators on YouTube that have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. All right. And what happens is if you have any other information that they aren't privy to, a lot of times they will lash out and, try to dismiss you and things like that, use pejoratives and stuff like that. And I just find it funny. It just shows you. And I want to show Maryland-based Triumphant Tiff. In my comment section this morning, she said that a lot of times people will lash out at you because they aren't sure of the information they have. And that was a very good response by this young lady. And just shout out to Triumphant Tiff. She's probably one of the most objective minded content creators I've run across in a good while. There are other ones, but I'm saying most recently. So shout out to Triumphant Tiff. But I'm going to show you something that was drawn up back in 2010. And you have to ask yourself this one question. Self, why on earth would people sit in rooms and actually debate these things and actually draft documentation about it? Most people go about their day trying to live their life and raise their children. So you have to ask yourself the mindset, why would people come up with stuff like this? It is game, and I can prove it. Did you also know that the United States Army has a ray gun for crowd dispersal? Has any of you ever heard of the LRAD gun? LRAD stands for Long Range Acoustic Device. And they brought it out back in 2009, I think at the G7 conference in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This thing burst eardrums to my understanding, but it's really good for crowd control. And I say that for this reason. The American public will eventually catch on to the game. And that's when the fun starts. And you have to wonder, will our government actually pull triggers on American citizens at that point? Again, me being prior service, I think about stuff like that. This is game theory, most definitely. All y'all take care. Greenville, Mississippi till I die.
About to share with you comes from the Rockefeller Foundation, and credit to Dave C. for sending me this. Scenarios for the future of technology and international development. I'm going to skip down. By the way, this report was produced by the Rockefeller Foundation and the Global Business Network in May of 2010. I'm going to skip down to page 18 and just read a few paragraphs and tell me if what we're seeing today isn't pretty much what they wanted all along. Page 18 starts, Lockstep, a world of tighter top-down government control and more authoritarian leadership with limited innovation and growing citizen pushback. Remember, this was written in 2010. They write, in 2012, the pandemic that the world has been anticipating for years finally hit. Unlike 2009's H1N1, this new influenza strain originating from wild geese was extremely virulent and deadly. Even the most pandemic-prepared nations were quickly overwhelmed when the virus streaked around the world, infecting nearly 20% of the global population and killing 8 million in just 7 months. The majority of them healthy young adults. The pandemic also had a deadly effect on economies. International mobility of both people and goods screeched to a halt, debilitating industries like tourism and breaking global supply chains. Even locally, normally bustling shops and office buildings sat empty for months, devoid of both employees and customers. The pandemic blanketed the planet, though disproportionate numbers died in Africa, Southeast Asia, and Central America, where the virus spread like wildfire in the absence of official containment protocols. But even in developed countries, containment was a challenge. The United States' initial policy of strongly discouraging citizens from flying proved deadly in its leniency, accelerating the spread of the virus not just within the US, but across borders. However, a few countries did fare better, China in particular. Now remember guys, this is just fiction. It's a projection written in 2010. They say the Chinese government's quick imposition and enforcement of mandatory quarantine for all citizens, as well as its instant near hermetic sealing off of all borders, saved millions of lives, stopping the spread of the virus from earlier than in other countries and enabling a swifter post-pandemic recovery. China's government was not the only one that took extreme measures to protect its citizens from risk and exposure. During the pandemic, national leaders around the world flexed their authority and imposed airtight rules and restrictions, from the mandatory wearing of face masks to body temperature checks at the entries to communal spaces like train stations and supermarkets. Even after the pandemic faded, this more authoritarian control and oversight of citizens and their activities stuck and even intensified. In order to protect themselves from the spread of increasingly global problems, from pandemics to transnational terrorism to environmental crises and rising poverty, leaders around the world took a firmer grip on power. Friends, I cannot stress enough how important a document like this is. It's truly a smoking gun of what we've been warned by Aaron Russo and others is coming. It's their plan. We've known it forever. How were they going to get it? It turns out a pandemic is the perfect way to garner more unilateral, unchecked power. Back to the document. At first, the notion of a more controlled world gained wide acceptance and approval. Citizens willingly gave up some of their sovereignty and their privacy to more paternalistic states in exchange for greater safety and stability. Citizens were more tolerant and even eager for top-down direction and oversight, and national leaders had more latitude to impose order in the ways they saw fit. In developed countries, this heightened oversight took many forms: biometric IDs for all citizens, for example, and tighter regulation of key industries whose stability was deemed vital to national interest. Developed countries enforced cooperation with a suite of new regulations and agreements, slowly but steadily restored both order and, importantly, economic growth. So again, let's just review what's happened so far. A virus has been released, whether by accident or on purpose. You decide. Evidence that it is a bioweaponized virus, so more deadly than it otherwise would be. Whether that's true or not, you decide. But the end game is more unilateral power, more unchecked power, and more control by the government, by the corporations, and I would note, more bailouts for the banks.